What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the due diligence period and the paperwork that's needed for that part of the process. So be sure that you guys take some good notes and follow along with your laptops. Also, before we get started, I'm going to talk about what the buy-sell agreement says about the due diligence period, and then I'm going to talk about what paperwork you need for that part of the process. So let's get to it. So here we're looking at the buy-sell agreement, and line 183 is talking about the due diligence and inspection period. So this portion where it says due diligence period from 183 down to line 191, this line here is saying how much time you have for your inspection period. The inspection period starts the day after the contract is executed, meaning once you have the buyer and the seller's signatures and initials, the inspection period starts the day after. The sentence here on line 188, this is letting you know that the seller is to keep all of the utilities on throughout this entire process. Down here on line 189, this is saying that anytime that the buyer is not granted access to the property, that the due diligence period is to be extended whatever number of days the buyer isn't granted access. Line 193, effective buyer's failure to timely provide written termination of the buyer's request. This is saying that if the buyer doesn't respond with either written notice of termination or a buyer's request, that the due diligence period is deemed accepted by the buyer, meaning that they're wanting to move forward. So be sure that you get the buyer's response or a termination over to the sellers within that time period. Line 198 to 206 is letting you know all of the different things and inspections that you can get done during this time period. Line 208 is talking about the buyer's options that they have prior to the due diligence period. So line 212, option 1, the buyer may elect in writing to terminate the agreement and declare the agreement null and void, meaning the buyer can walk away for whatever reason if they are not satisfied with any part of the inspection. Line 215 is saying that if the buyer does choose option 1, that the contract is in fact null and void and that they are entitled to get their deposit back, as long as they do that within the time frame. Option 2 is that the buyer send over the request of items that they want either repaired or replaced. Line 204, seller's response to buyer's request. The seller has 72 hours to respond to the buyer's request. Line 228, if the seller fails to respond within those 72 hours, the buyer now has 72 hours from the time that the seller's 72 hours are up to either accept the property in its current conditions or elect to terminate this agreement. If the seller fails to respond back to you within 72 hours and you as the buyer also fail to respond within those 72 hours, the contract is considered to be null and void with the exception for return of the deposit. Keep in mind, if you give yourself 10 days for the inspection period, if you get all of the inspections taken care of within those 5 days and you send over a buyer's response, the 72 hours start there. So you no longer have 10 days for this inspection period. Those 72 hours, the back and forth, those start the day that you send over the buyer's response. Line 237, buyer's response to seller's response. This is saying that if the seller does respond to your buyer's response and they don't agree to fix any of the items, the buyer has 72 hours to either respond accepting the seller's response to the buyer's request, or accept the property in its current conditions, or elect to terminate the agreement in writing. Line 247 is saying that if the seller responds to you and you as the buyer, you don't respond within those 72 hours, that the contract is considered to be null and void. Here, line 251 to 253, this is saying that once the buyer and the seller both come to an agreement on the repairs that are going to be made, the seller is not obligated to make any additional repairs. And now we're going to go over to the buyer's response to the due diligence period. So here we're looking at the document that you need to send over to the seller. As you can see here, this information is all pretty self-explanatory. You're going to put the subject property, you're going to put the MLS number, you're going to put the date of the buy-sell agreement, you're going to put the buyer's name, and if you have it, you're going to put the seller's name. The seller's name should be on the buy-sell agreement, so you can just go ahead, check that out, and you can put the seller's name in here. This first box here is saying that all inspections were done and everything looked good and the buyer does not want anything taken care of. They're going to go ahead and move forward with the process. This box is where you're going to put any any items that your buyer wants to get taken care of. Be careful whenever you're going over this with your client. There are going to be situations where they ask where you think if they should get something taken care of. If your client is asking you if you think they should get something looked at or taken care of, always recommend a professional to come out and take care of it. So in this box, this is where you're going to put whatever it is you want your client to take care of. This box here is saying that the buyer, after the inspections, they do not wish to proceed with the process. The contract is going to be null and void. You're going to have your buyers sign here. You're going to date. And this is going to be the date and time for the agent that you're going to be sending this over to. If you scroll down, if you represent the seller side, this is what you're going to see on your end. So when you get a chance to respond, now you're going to send over the seller's response to the property inspection. All of this information should already be filled out, but if it's not, same thing, go ahead and fill this out. This box is saying that the seller agrees to remedy all of the issues on the buyer's request. This box is saying that the seller is going to only fix these items from the buyer's request. So if the buyer asks for A, B, C, D, and E to get fixed, and the seller only wants to fix A, B, and C, they're going to put what they're willing to fix in this box here. This box is saying that the seller is going to give a monetary value for the items that the buyer wanted to get taken care of. In this space here, the seller could say, we're going to give you $5,000 to fix whatever it is you want to get taken care of with the property, but we're not going to fix any one of those items. We're just going to give you the money to get it taken care of yourself. And in that event, you can get a contractor to go out, get some quotes on some things, and figure out what it is exactly that you're wanting to fix. And this box here is saying that the seller is not going to remedy any of the items on your list. Once you've chosen the appropriate box, you're going to have your sellers sign here. You're going to have them date, and you're going to have the date and time that it was sent back over to the buyer, and you're going to have the buyer's agent initial here. And the last thing is going to be the buyer's final response. So the buyers responded, they sent the response over to the sellers responded, and now it's back in the buyer's hand to make a final decision. This box here is saying that all terms and conditions of the due diligence period has been satisfied, meaning that you guys have come to an agreement, and the buyer and the seller both elect to move forward. This box is saying that the seller's response is rejected by the buyer and all deposits to be returned back to the buyer. You're going to have the buyers sign here, date and time, and you're going to have the sellers sign here, date and time, and you're going to file the paperwork appropriately. That's all I have for today, guys. This is a very, very important part of this process. So please make sure if you have any questions, like always, leave me a comment down below. And also, if you have any suggestions on future videos, be sure to leave me a comment down below as well. If you found this video helpful in any way, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps out tremendously. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Don't forget to work hard, stay focused, and be elite. And as always, thanks for watching.